Thank you for that introduction and Living Futures. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I was honored when I was asked to come and do this, so meant a lot to me, and I appreciate y'all taking the time to come out and check us out on during such wild times and on a Saturday. So I really appreciate that. So what I wanted to kind of speak to today was something that as a kid I didn't really know I was doing it. I was just doing what I loved to do and what I felt compelled to do. But then as I got older, it kind of turned into what I did, which was illustration and just the kind of creative path. That was always the one thing that made sense to me growing up. As was said earlier, I grew up as a military kid, so I moved every like 2.5 years. And that's out of your control. So as a kid, and this was before the internet, when the world that you're in is gone, then that's it. And then you kind of start over and over and over again. But the one thing that was consistent for me was my sketchbook and creativity and, my room. So it kind of started there, and me kind of embracing my world and my environment that I was just getting introduced to from being in like Darmstadt, Germany, and Frankfurt and Munich, and then moving back to the States, just kind of embracing all these different cultures, languages, visuals, that just kind of made me really perceptive of the world around me, which then led to me going to school for design and creativity, and then graduating and getting my first job as a designer, and just kind of speaking to that, once I kind of jumped into the professional world of what I do, my first introduction to it was like the PR world, and so it's just kind of working on projects, different things, working for different people. And like anybody straight out of school, you're trying to build your portfolio and just get projects and do this thing. And it was cool, but who I am as a person in this planet, in this world, in this place that I live in, was very much ingrained in me that this is something that this is my home, and I don't know what this is, but I'm here and I'm doing it. And I felt like it was important for me to always use my skills to kind of speak to that. And so over time, as I continued my professional career, I always felt like, I wanted to have an avenue to always create and continue to express how I feel. But kind of what we were talking about earlier, life comes in and kind of makes you do things you got to do to keep the lights on or do whatever you got to do, and you don't always have time to kind of like feed that voice that's always there. But I started to be like, what, I don't want to allow myself to just have that be an answer for myself, I guess. And I started to kind of think about how could I embrace this duality of like, this is my profession, this is what I'm doing with my skills, but I've done this since I was a kid, and I want that voice to always be able to speak just as loudly as, I got to pay my mortgage, you know what I mean? I got to do stuff like that. But, and so this kind of what led to this balance of creativity and what I'm talking about today, which is creative sustainability. Speaking to kind of that balance that I've found for myself from a creative perspective, but then also the ability to continue to contribute to the world that I live in, and also be a human being with responsibilities and all that jazz that we all got to do. So first slide, creative responsibility. Here's a little illustration that kind of speaks a little bit to it. Dad, what is climate change? Difficult conversations that we all have in life about different things, but then kind of trying to find this creative balance between either mother and son, father and daughter, whatever. But two polar bears standing on icebergs. One of them, they're separated, they're breaking apart. He's asking a little tough question that the parent not sure how they're going to answer it. And that's kind of my way of starting to get these conversations going with people to start to think about climate change and different things about our world and our environment. Let me see. The big one. There we go. So how do we talk about complex issues with complex audiences? One thing that I've learned, not only through my life in general with personal experiences, but just in the professional world of it all too, is that everybody has a story and a background, and everybody has a history to where what has brought them to this moment in time that is right in front of you. And I don't know, for instance, everybody in this room, I don't know everybody's story from when they were a child. So, you know, my approach on how I might try to explain something I'm passionate about or something that's important to me, based off of your path or whoever I might be talking to, we might run into roadblocks based off of how I might be describing something to you that I'm passionate about based off of experiences that you have that I don't know. And I've started to, in my life, just find out that, like, you know, I might be trying to explain something to someone or share information or talk about things that I've researched or things that I'm passionate about. But there's always, everybody's has a different story. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to respect that, as much as sometimes it might get you frustrated because you really want people to just see, like, you know, what you're saying and how it's true, and you just want them to understand. But what I've realized is that over time, it's like starting with the fact that I don't know anything about you or your journey, so let's start there and then see if I can reel you to where I'm at. And one of the things that I've figured out over time is that creativity is something that is a good bridge for a lot of different kinds of conversations. So when I asked that question of how do we talk about complex issues with complex audiences, when I sat and thought about that for a long time, the solution I got was you get them to talk to themselves. And the way that I landed at that was, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier, where it's like, you know, when you stand in front of a piece of art, you know, in a museum or whatever, it's like, it's quiet. You know, people are just walking through quietly. You know, if you're talking, people are like, what are you doing? You know, it's kind of this internal thing that people go through in museums. And but I bet if there was a microphone in people's heads, it would be so crazy in there. And so I was like, you know, I can say things all day to somebody. I can be saying things that are accurate and are true and factual and be showing all kinds of stuff. But because I'm a human being and it's coming out of my mouth and they don't know me and we might look the same, we might look different, there's so many things that might be a barrier to whatever conversation I'm trying to have. So I was like, I'm just gonna step out of it and let that internal thing that I've always had since I was a kid do the talking. So what I started to do was just, you know, I sketch all the time, but I kind of just started to kind of let those thoughts be the driving mechanism behind my creativity. And when I started to do that, some really cool things started to happen. And I started to share them online, started to resonate with people. And I was like, you know, this could be that thing that I was trying to find that could be an avenue for me to create and still get my voice out there and talk to people, and kind of like that bridge between me and these people that I don't know, but, you know, something that I'm doing visually resonates with them. And so I decided to take a little bit to think about it, and I went to the beach, which is one of my favorite places, and was walking around, and I was trying to think about, like, stuff like this, and I was like, you know, why do I want to do this? And I was like, well, you know, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and because, you know, I care about these issues, and blah, 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 blah. And I kept coming up with this, you know, I was saying because of this stuff. And then I was thinking about the word because, and then I was like, well, who am I doing it for? I was like, for me, you know, for us, the people, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, because us, that sounds kind of cool. And then I started to break it down, and, like, to be, to exist, you know, the cause is the mission, and us is, like, the people. And so I landed on this. For because us as being kind of like my world for creativity and things related to the greater good, and kind of like my passion project amongst the world of all of the, you know, PR, corporate, you know, projects or whatever I got to do. But this is kind of like my way of getting out those feelings that I have, as well as a place for them to exist that's separate from anything that I do in that other world. It's like I'm using the same medium, I'm using the same tools, but it's kind of like my voice is able to exist fully in this place. And so I started to kind of flesh it out and think about, like, okay, like, let me get this online, let me get a website up, whatever. And I started to just really just create as much as possible. And then I started to, you know, I was thinking about, well, you know, I can throw some of this stuff on some shirts and, have people wear them and things like that. And one of the things that I started to think about was that what I talked about earlier about how people having internal conversations with themselves, one of my goals was to create work and designs that, like, if you see them, we haven't met, but the message is kind of telling you something about me, or might want you to, or spark you to start a conversation with me about what you read or what you see. Because I felt like that was the quickest way for me to, like, have a deeper conversation with somebody than me just coming surface level right at them talking about something, not knowing their story, their background, or where they came from. And so this shirt, for instance, climate change is real, let's have more days like this. And just kind of that passion of fishing, camping, all that kind of stuff. It's just a fun little shirt. But on the site, there's everything from designs that speak to things like that to short little animations or videos that I've made related to climate change, or just different things that I'm passionate about. When the coronavirus landed, that was something that was on my mind a lot, and so I kind of created this little promo, getting people to stay safe, just because it was something that was part of my world and that I was passionate about. You know what I mean? I don't see it as like, well, I'll say this: like, sometimes I have found that some people will take it as preaching to them, or feeling as if you're on a soapbox saying this thing to them. And, like, when I started to see kind of the feedback that I would get throughout life, where I'm just talking about something I'm passionate about. I'm not trying to, like, shove it down somebody's throat or say it all in their face. I'm just saying, like, hey, this is how I feel. That is receptive to some, and some take it as you coming at them as if you know better than everybody else. And even though that's not the case, I found that, kind of like I said, stepping back and just creating and just letting that be my voice really allowed me to resonate with people. So this site, becauseus.org, is just full of, essentially, if you want to get a part of my brain, just go there, and you'll see stuff that's going on, bubbling in there. And this is another illustration kind of that speaks to kind of what I was talking about, where, like, I feel we all are made up of the universe, and we all, it's all inside of all of us. So this illustration is kind of me silently saying that, save yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I can tell you everything about climate change. I can tell you all the things that are true. For whatever reason, you may not want to hear that. But if I just showed you this, if this was on the back of my T-shirt, and you were standing in the line behind me at some store, and you're just looking at it, you might ask me what it's about. You might we might start a conversation solely based off of the fact that resonated with you. And that's kind of what I mean. That's what I continue to try to do as much as possible, because I found that actually has happened, which has been pretty cool. And people have told me that some of the things that I've created, like, people ask them about it and things like that. So that's all I can really ask for, you know what I mean? Like, and to have more conversations, because I really do feel the only way that change will happen is if people will internally have that conversation with themselves, and then get brave enough to ask someone a question about it, and then they'll find, like, oh, there are people that are actually, willing to listen and help, and this is cool, versus being intimidated by it, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where that came from. Then, like I said, I like to be outside, I like to go in nature, that's where I get mostly inspired. And so I created these, like, 3 posters. Each of them is like, live it, breathe it, feel it, climate change is real. And let's have more days like this. So it's just like, characters and scenes doing cool, fun stuff. And this was kind of like, a lot of my ideas will start off like this. I'm like, what if I did this? And then I'll just kind of throw it up on Because Us. And then later on, I might flesh out a whole other idea, and then I'll create, like, a bunch of stuff. But this is kind of what I mean, just creating as much as possible to get people to have these conversations and think about things, to then have larger conversations, where you can get more granular and get, have more deeper conversations. But I have found that creativity and art is a really good icebreaker for a lot of difficult conversations. And so that's what I've continued to do with Because Us. This is another example of where, I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I was just sketching, and I drew the drawing on the left, and I was like, that would be a pretty cool shirt. Then I put on a sweatshirt, and then, you know, someone got the sweatshirt, and then they posted it themselves online, and then, you know, people comment on it and like how it resonated with them. And that's kind of all I can ask for, is just that continue to have these, people have these conversations where I'm not saying anything to them, I'm just creating as much as possible and just getting that to come out of me as much as possible to let other people have these conversations. And then, so, you know, like I said, the illustration went from like me just thinking about it, and I was like, you know, this would be a pretty cool bag, so I just throw it in a bag. And then somebody gets the bag, and then they're in the store, and somebody asks a question. So that's kind of what I mean, how it builds on top of one another over and over, and those conversations continue to happen. And then I made some hats, which is always fun. And kind of this slogan that I came up for Because Us, which extreme times call for extreme creativity. That's kind of the message for the Because Us brand, I guess you could say. And you know, this hat, for instance, the idea is that you'll see the logo on the front, and then on the back, there would always be these different kinds of messages. So once again, like if I'm just standing somewhere hanging out, and somebody that I can't see just reads what I'm, you know, on my hat, they have that internal conversation with themselves, and then maybe they're like, hey, what does that mean? Or what are you doing with that? Or blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of where it all begins. And so when I speak on creative sustainability, that's kind of what I mean, where I feel like we are currently in and are embarking on problems that are wildly different than what we have seen, in my opinion. And the only way that we can achieve solutions, in my mind, is by being creative in a way that we've never been before. And I think that, you know, we just have to come up with new solutions for some of the problems that currently exist. And I think the creative space is one that I've always felt you're kind of like a vessel for the universe in a way, where like if you open your mind to thinking about it, I have found there's this cool thing that happens where you start to have this like cool relationship between what you're trying to do and what something's trying to tell you. And then I have found that it's come out most for me through creativity. And the more that I do that, I feel like solutions come, because I feel that currently the only solutions that I feel work or that have a chance are ones that come from somewhere else. So I feel like to be a vessel for that creatively is how we can like achieve stuff like that. So this is a Climate Change is Real hat. I have some of them here if you want one. They are over there, I think. And it's another example of one of the hats. So if you'd like to get one, they're back there for like probably $20 if you want one. But it's an example of what I'm continuing to do, trying to build creative sustainability to just create as much as possible, because I feel like somewhere in there is a solution to a lot of the problems that we have today. And it's just a matter of opening ourselves up to that space to get answers for a lot of the problems. So that's all I got, really. So cool. Thank you.